brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
It is definitely time for more Suds. Welcome to Sip, Suds, and Smokes. I'm one of your hosts today, good old boy Mike, and joining me here in the studio is Reverend Mark.
Good to see you, friends.
Always great to have Reverend Mark here in the studio with me, and a great lineup for our discussion today. In this said segment, we're going to talk about barrel-aged stout beers, and we only have 4 that we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk a little bit about the style as well as some other beers we didn't taste today, but we've tasted them in the past, and we want to chat about those as well. The 4 beers we're going to be tasting and rating today are Brooklyn Black Ops, Anderson Valley's Bourbon Barrel Stout, Figueroa Mountain's Stagecoach Stout, and Full Sail Imperial Stout. So those are the beers that we're going to go through and talk about today. We're going to be rating these beers as we go along. We're going to be using our Sip, Suds, and Smokes ratings, and our Suds ratings are the following. Number 1, that sucks, give me anything but a bud. Number 2 was that a belch. Number 3, what a relief. Number 4, a body should really not make that sound. And number 5, listen to that hang time, give me another. Yes, I went to rating reform school so that I could finally remember all those. So really, this is a very diverse style, for us to talk about today. And I thought we'd chat a little bit about, the beer and generally these styles and some things that, brewers are kind of playing around with. It's not as simple as just taking a stout or an imperial stout and dumping it in a barrel and then just waiting. There's a little bit more to it than that, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You need to be able to, first consider what particular kind of strength that you want from, even though an imperial stout is on the level of a barley wine. When you look at barrel aging these stouts, you're parking them, so to speak, in a barrel for a couple of months to a year, and that's going to add a little bit more to not only the alcohol strength, because it can continue to ferment in there, but that it picks up other kind of nuances of flavor that you normally don't have just in your imperial stout. So it's still it's a creative enterprise for our brewers and breweries, and then I'm one who is always willing to sample what they have declared as the best for the year of this particular kind of specialty.
Well, I think one of the things that I always am looking for when this particular style of beer comes around is the booze in check. And many times when you take beer and you're dropping it into a bottle that has any style of a distilled product, rum, cognac, bourbon, whiskey, there are certain characteristics of the underlying beer, itself. And I think the question that I'm always looking for is, has the barrel done something to make this beer better?
Right.
Or has it drawn away from what was there? Or more importantly, there's palate distraction. There's a technical term. Has the whatever the barrel was there, is it overwhelming your palate to the point where you're going, wow, this is really good whiskey, dude, this is a stout beer. Right. It's like, you need to wake up there and pay attention, what's really supposed to be going on, with the beer itself. certainly the fact that, I like how you describe whether they're going for a certain ABV, characteristic. And so there's a difference between a boozy flavor and it actually having more alcohol, in it as a result as well. The underlying stout could be, you're really focusing in on more imperial, strength characteristic, as well as, just the flavor profile that you're going for as well. Are you looking for a bit more cocoa, or is you looking for something that's a bit more dry? Are you looking for more Russian stout? All of these things kind of play into what you're kind of going for. And I know ingredients play a heavy hand in this, but then you take all those and you dump it into a barrel, and it's like, wonder what's going to happen, man.
Yeah.
So we have taken these four and taken a look at them. These are not all the same stouts, these four either, are they? Some of them were Imperial, some of them were not, right?
Some are like higher gravity oatmeal stouts. Yeah. I remember, let's see, as I'm looking at my notes, I think it's the Stagecoach, which is a little bit more on the kind of like higher gravity oatmeal stout end with a little less emphasis on barrel aging. But yeah, they're towards the end of that Imperial stout spectrum.
Well, I think that that's something definitely to pay attention to, is what is the underlying beer, when you're going after a barrel-aged product. But some of what you're going to experience in a barrel-aged stout is going to depend on, the style of the stout that the people were going after to begin with. Even with that said, I'll say that I actually had these four in we'll call it a semi-blind tasting. It's like I knew what bottles we were going to pour, and I kind of knew what, but at the end of the day, I was kind of staring at four glasses, and I couldn't remember what's in what. So, anyway, I think it was a fairly semi-blind, tasting that I kind of went through these, and I feel pretty good about, my tasting notes as well as the ratings that I have here. So with that, let's get right to it with our first rating. Actually, let's go in reverse order today. How about that? Okay. So we're going to pick our top two here, and we're going to name our second beer first. So you want to go first? You want me to?
Okay, I'll go.
All right.
It was a really, they were both in a dead heat for first. Okay, so when I mention this one as my number two, it is a close, second, very much so. But I would recommend highly the Brooklyn Black Ops.
Wow.
There is definitely a semblance of barrel-aged deliciousness with vanilla in there and other kinds of, sort of woody, spicy tones. I think it's understated, which is, in many, many respects a very good thing. I think the roasty and alcoholic strength is present, but not overly persistent. And there's also some caramel tones in there with a hint of butterscotch. So, I thought it was a very well-rounded beer, and, I would buy a bomber of this in a heartbeat.
Well, what's your Suds rating then for this going to be?
I give it a 4.
A 4. All right. So, really great beer and a great choice. And ironically, it was my number one pick. So it was a good transition from your number 2 to my number 1. My tasting notes around Brooklyn Black Ops is I thought it had a delicate balance, and it was really of the alcohol in the beer. I just thought that it was more subtle and it was in check. It was not too sweet, and I think that's probably the big offender for me. When it comes to stout beer is, if it is just too sweet. Right. I'm not saying it can't be sweet at all. It's just like, wow, So I really thought that all these things kind of being in check, were really done really well. And I'm glad that, this was a beer that was very elusive for a lot of people. let me tell you a little bit more about this beer since we both talked about it. This is made by Brooklyn. The name of the beer is Black Ops, made by Brooklyn Brewery out of Brooklyn, New York. The ABV is 10.5%. The distribution on this is what is the interesting story. So when this beer first came out, it was one of these beers that you heard about it, but you couldn't find it. It was just like nearly impossible. And I don't know if that was just a marketing ploy, by Brooklyn Brewery, or if that was just, the way that they were kind of going after, the amount of beer that they could make just couldn't sustain the measure of demand around it. So probably for the first 2 or 3 years that this beer was out, I only heard about it and I never could find it. It was just nearly impossible. I would say that they've definitely expanded distribution of this. I have found it, in very broad distribution. You can definitely find this beer now. Good bang for buck as well. I've really felt, thought even though this is probably what most people would probably consider a little pricey for a bomber, I would certainly say for the quality of the beer that's in there, good bang for buck still. So worth the hunt, worth the kill, and definitely worth the time to check out this beer. My Suds rating for Brooklyn Black Ops is going to be 4. A body should really not make that sound, and a great beer at that. So I really can't wait to talk about. I'm going to swing this back around. I'm going to talk about my number 2.
Go ahead.
So my number 2 is going to be from Full Sail, Imperial Stout, out of this pick. And a great beer, very interesting brewery, and I think swinging back to a great part of the country we both love. I mean, I love Hood River. I love the Portland, Oregon market. It's just it's a wonderful part of the beer scene itself. There were some times that when I was tasting this, it had reminiscence of another great brewery from that area, and I really it reminded me a lot of Old Rasputin, and North Coast beer, itself. I wonder if there is some crossbreeding, of personnel, or possibly of the recipe, between the two here. But at any rate, I thought this was a really great. First, I really just thought it was a really great Russian style Imperial. I don't know if that's what they were aiming for, but my tasting notes around this is that it was more dry, but it was in check specifically for an Imperial Stout with the alcohol. It was, you just didn't feel the influence of the barrel basically overwhelming the beer itself. So, just kind of having all of these things in good check, it was working really well for me. And, I really enjoyed this. My Suds rating for the Full Sail Black Gold Imperial Stout is going to be 3. So, what is your number 2 pick?
Okay, we're just kind of like, sort of upside down, but not completely out of alignment here. My number 1 pick is the Full Sail.
Oh, how about that?
I think part of what sort of nudged me in the direction of singling this one out as number 1 among the 4 that we sampled, and all 4 were just wonderful, is that it was extremely fresh. That is, I think even when we look at high gravity beers that have been barrel aged, that once they have been bottled and put on the market, there is a certain level of quality that can't be sustained for very long once it's in the bottle. And so I know this particular bottled product had just been put in the bottle like less than a month ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why the barrel was so well in check here, is that it didn't have enough time to basically overwhelm the original product. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah, so I think on one hand it was fresh.
Not a bad approach in my
Yeah, and it, the beer before it was packaged, on the bottling line, it had been actually sort of warehoused in barrels for 12 months. But this is just the early part of the year, and so this was just offered to the market recently. So I thought that had a lot to sort of commend to our palate. That it was a fresh product. It had a roasty aspect to it, caramel notes, a bouquet of both malt and fruit. But that I just think it to me at least was not pushing the style category too far beyond its sort of original historic style appeal. That is, as you think about an Imperial Stout, I mean, historically it was basically we call it a Russian Imperial Stout, but it was brewed by English breweries and then shipped to Russia during the Tsar period, Tsarist Russia. And so, the reason why it became sort of a style was because high alcohol beers had more shelf life. That is, if you allowed them to be, a little bit more robust in terms of their gravity, their strength, then as you ship them and they stayed in warehouses, they wouldn't spoil. And so I think that as we look at that as sort of the way we define this particular style of beer, then I think that what has been done here is that we've sort of added a couple of layers of flavor and nuance that weren't historically present, but that still give us an idea of what it was all about.
Well, what's your Suds rating going to be for Full Sail?
I give it a 4.
A 4? How about that? The body should really not make that sound. And, a really great beer. So did you, close to similar to remind you of Old Rasputin at all when you had this one?
Yeah, it did, except that, of course, this is barrel aged, and there's some other notes there, but, it's...
Huh. Well, that would be an interesting mystery to try and figure out if there has been some crossbreeding, between personnel, between North Coast and Full Sail here, since they have close proximity to each other anyway, and similar, access to some similar ingredients as well. But a really great beer, and I must confess, this is only like the second or third, Full Sail, beer that I've had, and this really caught my attention. Maybe with a beer that I had not looked at in the past. So they've done really well with this beer at GABF. This is they've won silver and gold. I'm sorry, I think it's silver at GABF in the Wood Barrel Aged strong beer category with this beer. So that is some stiff competition. That was one of the first things I said when we were sitting there tasting everything when we first started this was, man, this reminded me a lot of the rare beer tasting event that we went to in Pines for Prostrates. It just there were so many great products in that room, and this tasting profile just really brought back that really great memory of that really stellar event.
Yeah.
And a lot of great stuff in that room. If there's one beer, in this category for me that we didn't taste tonight, but definitely invokes a lot of memories, for me about a really great beer that's in this category is AleSmith's Speedway Stout.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Definitely a really phenomenal beer. I had a chance to meet the brewer this year, and it's just a really great beer. Also did very well at GABF, with Speedway Stout, and I think that it hits upon some of these very common tasting style cues that for whatever reason it works for me, which is everything has to be in check. It's just if it's too booze forward, if I'm tasting more of whatever the distilled barreling agent was or wine agent was that was in the barrel. if the beer itself, before they put it in, just wasn't doing it very well. Basically, if everything's just not coming to well in great harmony, it's just something just kind of loses it for me, and my palate just goes, okay, I don't know what was there, but I don't like this. I mean, for you, when you're thinking about style characteristics, either thinking about Speedway or the beers that we've had here, kind of what does it do for you? What are you looking for when you say, Reverend Mark, what's a great, barrel aged stout? I mean, what kind of evokes, what are the tasting things, that you are always thinking of when somebody says that?
Well, I mean, I'm looking, first and foremost for style consistency with just, it being is this a good Imperial Russian stout? And then when we add in the question of how does the barrel aging sort of accentuate, the strengths of this style and the flavor profile that we've come to associate with this style, then to me the barrel part of it is a question of how does this add to what is already very well established with this style. And so it's a question of balance. It's really a question of balance. And I think barrel aging is a very wonderful sort of enterprise that many of our craft breweries are into, and I celebrate it. Even as a home brewer, I want to do some of it myself. But I think we also have to remind ourselves, be true to the style that you're serving.
Yeah, definitely. Well, actually, I thought you were going to answer the question more simplistic than that as I was tossing it to you. What are you looking for? And I thought you were going to say, I'll have another.
Yeah. Well, that too.
And I was thinking, that's something that our good friend Eddie would say. Yep. You know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for another. That's totally it.
And I'll tell you, of all these that we assembled together, today you can offer me another now. Now.
Yeah, definitely. These were all great beers. Well, I enjoyed our discussion about these 4 beers. Hopefully, if you have a chance to run across a barrel-aged stout, hopefully you'll pick one up, try it out, capture your own tasting notes. Drop us a line here at Sips, Suds, and Smokes. We'd love to know what you think about these style of beers as well, and maybe one that we didn't run across. These are definitely becoming a bit more prevalent and available for the general public. So, definitely enjoyed our discussion for these beers, and Reverend Mark, it was really great being with you for this episode.
It's always such a pleasure.
Hey, listen, if you haven't checked out a lot of places to catch Sips, Suds, and Smokes online, you can definitely catch us on iTunes, on Stitcher. You can catch it on Spreaker, our original media host, as well as a lot of other online outlets as well. Hey, listen, do a favor. Take a moment and actually rate this episode online. That'd really help us out and help us get a little further up on a few search engines. That'd be great. Listen, you can drop us a line anytime. info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. We're on Twitter @sips. I'll have it. I think I'll have another. Just get on Twitter and look for us. You'll find us. No, it's @SipSudSmoke is our handle on Twitter. And definitely on our Facebook page, you can catch a lot of great information about the show, about everything going on here as well. A lot of great episodes you'll be able to catch with Reverend Mark and I in the past as well as in the future. So for right now, I'm going to again thank Reverend Mark for joining us.
Good to be here.
This is good old boy Mike, and I'm going to ask you to keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.